Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It was really good to see many of you last night at the reception. For those of you who weren't able to attend, I am Ann Moore, the chairman of Time Inc., and we're here in Cape Town. I told everybody last night I haven't been here since I was a girl. I was 20 years old in 1970, and I came to Cape Town, and it was such a wonderful experience. And one of the other events that Fortune sponsors annually is the world's most powerful women's conference. And about 6 years ago, Fortune magazine and Goldman Sachs, with the help of Dina Powell, who is now at Goldman Sachs, started a mentoring program with the U.S. State Department. And this is matching senior female executive talent in the U.S. with these entrepreneurial young women from around the world, particularly developing countries. And I understand we've mentored about 60 young women from the continent of Africa over the last 5 years. And I just want to say this, you young women from Africa are warriors and such a standout. One of these young women was Susan Mmakau from Lindhaven, South Africa. And she runs an orphanage there. And she was selected last year to be a mentee. She was sent to California, where 3 very accomplished women in the States worked with her. Susan Walsecki, I can never say Susan's name, and Megan Smith, who are 2 of the top women at Google, and a very prominent attorney who's with us today named Kathy Lutton, who's the global head of litigation at a law firm, Fish and Richardson in Silicon Valley, were her mentors. And these 3 women fell in love with Susan. So when they learned that Susan's kids take these long trips at school and they sometimes got harassed, and they decided to raise money to buy Susan a bus. And so they had a fundraiser, and if you didn't know, they had it at the other Susan's house. And if you didn't know Susan's place in history, she's the woman who rented her garage to 2 guys named Sergey and Larry when they were starting a company called Google. Have you heard of Google? So with the money raised there, our Susan bought her bus a few months ago. And so Fortune editor Pattie Sellers, who chairs the world's most powerful women's conference, and you're going to meet this morning, she oversees the mentoring program too. Well, so she saw Kathy, I guess, in California, heard about the bus, and they decided it would just be a fantastic thing to support Susan while we were here in South Africa. So they have just spent the last 3 days in the bus. Yes, 3 days in the bus. They spent 3 days in Susan's village, west of Johannesburg, and we had a photographer document it. You can go to, I think, fortune.com, and you too can take the bus trip to South Africa on the bus. Now, I have the pleasure this morning of introducing Bridgette. Bridgette Radebe is the executive chairman of Mmakau Mining. More importantly, she's one of the primary reasons we're here in Cape Town today, because Bridgette has attended a number of the world's most powerful global forums, and as well as our Women's Summit, and for many, many years, she has been harassing us. When are you going to bring the global forum to South Africa? We were a little tired of hearing this, Bridgette. So, Bridgette, we're here, thanks to you. She's been tireless in her efforts, not to get us to bring the event here, but she's just done everything possible to help make this forum a great success. And so we really want to thank Bridgette for everything she's done. She's a pioneer, as many of you know, in the South African mining industry. She's more than a decade of experience in contract mining and mining construction and mergers and acquisitions. She's a leader in her industry as a founder and board trustee member of the New African Mining Fund and a founder and president of the South African Mining Development Association. She's vice chairman of the Minerals and Mining Development Board that advises the Minister of Minerals and Energy, and she is the sponsor of today's breakfast. So thank you, Bridgette, and please come to the stage to start off our program.
Morning, and thank you very much, Anne Moore. I've always been so fascinated at the way the women, the most powerful women, do things in all those conferences and meetings that I've had with Pattie's leadership and all the women, and I couldn't be the only one enjoying that without embracing all the other African sisters to be part of this beautiful experience. And thanks for bringing it here, and thanks for bringing the whole global forum here. I would just want to say we're also very happy to have our Secretary of State in South Africa, Minister Maite. We call you in this country Minister of International Relations and Corporations. And in America, she is called Secretary of State. So she's our counterpart, our Hillary Clinton counterpart. Thanks for making it this morning. We're very lucky. The president went to the G20, and she said she was going to ask the president not to join him because she wanted to be here and give the support. And we're very lucky. So it was either us or the G20, and she decided to choose us. Thanks a lot. But anyway, we're all meeting here this morning to talk about the good things that you are doing, Mam Graça. This is what we call you in our country. The women that I'm going to introduce, and I'm very honored to do that because not only am I her daughter, but she's literally brought me up and brought all of us up. We've had the joy of having phenomenal women, grooming us, and that's why we are here today, because of women like these, and the late Adelaide Tambo and many others. But today, let me tell you about our distinguished guest, Mrs. Graça Machel. As you all know, she is the only woman so far that has married 2 presidents. Can you believe it? 2 presidents for the price of 1, ladies. No bodyguard. Okay, 2 presidents for the price of 1. No bodyguard. She's been very great. And the Guinness Books of Record have recognized that. Now, what do you have to do to be a woman to embrace the president of one country, and while we're still dealing with that, and then she becomes the president of, Nelson Mandela's wife, woman. Anyway, but we all know her as a renowned international advocate for women and children's rights, and has been a social and political activist over many decades. She has been very brave. As Minister of Education and Culture in Mozambique, where she was the First Lady during that time, and is still former First Lady of Mozambique and former First Lady of South Africa, she was responsible for overseeing an increase in primary school enrollment from 40% of children in 1975, over 90% of boys, and 75% of girls by 1989. She's also president of the Foundation for Community Development, which is an NGO, and that makes grants to civil societies, organizations to strengthen communities, facilitate social and economic justice, and assist in the reconstruction and development of post-war Mozambique. She's been very vocal in those issues of post-war and how children has been affected in war and war-torn countries. In 1994, the Secretary General of the United Nations appointed her as an independent expert to carry out an assessment of impact of armed conflicts on children. Her groundbreaking report was presented in 1996 and established a new and innovative agenda for comprehensive protection of children caught up in war, changing the policy and practice of governments, UN agencies, and international and national societies. That has been quite groundbreaking. And I remember every time she gave a report, she would cry because of the trauma that she would visualize and witness as a person that was leading that. Her many awards, she's won many awards, but one of the many awards include the laureate of the Africa Prize for Leadership for the Sustainable End of Hunger from the Hunger Project in 1992, and the Nansen Medal in recognition of her contribution to the welfare of refugee children in 1995. She has received the Inner Press Service International Achievements Award for her work on behalf of children, the Africa Distinguished Humanitarian Service Award, and the North-South Prize of Council of Europe, among others. More than ever, she also sits on many boards, but just to mention a few, UN Foundation, the Forum of the African Women Educationalists, the African Leadership Forum, and the International Crisis Group. She's also board member of the Global Alliance for Vaccines, and she also is the Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. But presently, she also serves as a member of the Elders, with former President Jimmy Carter, Mary Robinson, Kofi Annan, So this woman, wherever you need a woman's voice to be involved, she's there. So she's representing us effectively. But more than ever, Mam Graça, I must say, I have been very happy to have known you. And more than ever, one of my greatest achievements, I didn't put it in my CV though, when she got married, they told us that they were going to have a birthday party for President Mandela. So they tell my husband and I, can you please organize this birthday party? And there we went organizing this birthday party. Had everybody from all over the world come. And guess what? It happened to be her wedding. And we only discovered late in the afternoon at 5 that they were getting married. And they kept it from everybody, children, everybody, except Bishop Tutu was asked, do come to the house, marry us. And I guess, if you have so many interests with so many people around, that's probably the best way of doing it. And we had a lovely celebration in the evening, and I hosted the wedding party, birthday party, and now we're going to party along in creating good deeds that you have always been a leader in. And may I please ask you to... Pattie, you are going to have the honor of introducing Mrs. Machel. And Pattie, ladies, I've always met at the Women's Forum. She is the editor-at-large of Fortune, but more than ever, she is the chairperson, chair lady, of the most powerful women of the world. And every year, 200 of the most powerful women of the world, she hosts. And of course, that's when I see you, Anne Moore, and many others. And thank you very much for bringing a lot of the most powerful women to Africa. And I'm very happy, Pattie, to ask you to come on here and do justice to our beautiful, phenomenal woman, Mrs. Graça Machel.
Let's go up. We'll come up. Yep. I'll get it. Mm-hmm. I think come this way. Graça, are there steps over there?
Yes.
Oh, there are. Okay, good. Good. Thank you, everyone. It is so good to be here. And, I was sitting here thinking, this really is our first. I love that Anne Moore was talking about this as she actually renamed Most Powerful Women this morning. She started calling it the Global Most Powerful Women, which honestly we've never talked about it that way. But I would consider this a first step in taking Most Powerful Women global. And it is such an honor to make South Africa our first location in that globalization of Most Powerful Women. And I couldn't be more thrilled. I couldn't be more thrilled than to be interviewing Graça Machel at this moment. So thank you so much for being here. And we talked, and I'm allowed to call you Graça, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm going to start out by asking you a question that I have asked at least 100 people over the last decade, both men and women. What is power?
That is a big question. Power, I would say, is the ability to have clarity in vision and then to be able to influence as many people as you can to make that vision become a reality. For me, power is not the position, it's the capacity to engage, to galvanize, to mobilize, to bring up the best of abilities, of capacity, which other people do have, and enable them to be the best they can in what they do. So power is expressed in how you relate to other people. It's not in terms of how you occupy a position, and in that position, you exercise whatever is the mandate we have been given. That means to me that there are people who are in positions of power, but they don't have power or they don't exercise power properly. That's how I see it.
It's wonderful. I love that. And you used two words there. You used influence, which a lot of women use that word. It's very interesting, asking men and women this question. In fact, my favorite definition of power is, well, my favorite definition of power is actually one that Oprah told me years ago, which is the ability to impact with purpose. But this idea of the sort of privilege to influence, which is the term that Andrea Jung, the CEO of Avon, uses, the privilege to influence, which is similar to yours. And you also use the word enable, which is interesting. And one question that I would love to ask you is, how would you define yourself in a sentence? Because you have been in a unique position of having positions of power. You are in high places, and you've had to decide over the years, how am I going to use that influence that I have by being in the place that I am? And I'd just like to ask you, first of all, to define yourself in a sentence, and then talk about the choices you've made and how you've thought about exercising that power.
I always struggle to define myself, I must be honest. But I think I am a person who combines my mind and my heart together. Only when these two are aligned, I'm able to see where I am going and how I can get there. I see myself as with modesty, but I think once I know, I have a vision, I have clarity in that vision, I think I have the ability of engaging, motivating other people. I do not work in isolation. I never work in isolation. I always need to have a collective together. I take a lot of time to listen and to take the contributions and the ideas from others. And then I can fire people
Of that, enabling and empowering, one of your many causes currently is to empower women economically. Talk a little bit about that with your New Faces, New Voices program. Tell us what that program is and why you created it.
in our continent. We, in the last 2, maybe 3 decades, we made some progress in bringing women into the positions of power politically. That's why we have our Minister of International Relations. And so in politics, we still have a long way to go, but we have made progress. But there has been very little progress in women achieving the top of positions in business. South Africa may be a country which has made significant progress, but if you compare with other African countries, maybe Kenya, Nigeria, but all the rest, there's very little which has happened there. If I ask you what are the faces of business women in certain countries, you would take a long time to try to recognize them. So I feel we should combine these achievements in political arena with access to wealth and to manage wealth in a way which is socially responsible also. So I started this idea with some colleagues of mine to say we need to encourage group of women in different fields of business to move from the middle to the highest level, and also whenever it's possible to small to medium. And then the financial crisis came, and I saw all these very powerful people discussing how they were reshaping, revisiting, and they were reformulating the financial architecture as they were talking. And I say, but where is the face and the voice of women in all this? Again, they are going to reframe, they are going to reformulate, they are going to redesign, they are going to do all these re's you can call, but we women, being half of this world, we are not part of it. So I said, let's take an opportunity, because this is a time where people are prepared to listen, are prepared to take new ideas because they acknowledge that the old didn't serve as well. So I started to encourage a group of women who are sitting in this room, who are in the financial sector. I said, let's seize this opportunity. Let's tell the powerful that women count, and women have knowledge, they have expertise, they have talent, they have drive, so they can be part of this reshaping. So the initiative of New Voices is women in finance, more precisely. So it's not all the other business, no matter how important it is, but it's women in finance. It's to take this opportunity because the window can close, and before it closes, women have to feature there. And what we have decided is to focus in two directions. One is women in position of decision-making positions in the financial system. And if we take away our Maria and maybe a few, and Jill Marcus, and even in South Africa, we don't find too many women in the financial sector who are very powerful. But in the rest of the continent, even less. So we need to encourage all financial institutions. Let me say that we are engaging regulators, central banks, development banks, commercial banks, microfinance institutions, and insurance institutions. We engage them in a way, let me say, also modestly, it's the first time we put them together and say, as financial family, how do you look at women and how do you empower women? Some of them had started in their own field alone, but they had never looked at the whole family together and build the synergies of moving the system instead of moving only one sector of the financial, but to move the system together to look at women in a different way and to invest in women. So we have been talking, and we had a very successful conference in Nairobi in which all representatives of these different sectors were. I was struck by the kind of which came out of this summit.
And what was the ah?
The is many of them, they felt that there was something missing, but apparently they hadn't come to a point of how do we tackle it. So the discussion, again, as a collective, for me, again, as a collective, with the different colleagues from different fields of the financial sector, made them feel this is an opportunity. This is not an opportunity to do their own business, but it's also to connect with others and to increase the impact of the business they are doing. So the one direction is to have women in position of power within this financial system. We ask what we call drivers of change to look at their internal systems and identify who are the women with potential to be in the next future, for instance, to be in top management of these banks. And some of them we even ask, if you were to retire in 5 years, can you identify a woman who would replace you as a CEO of your big bank? Mm-hmm. And it means then you have to create the space in which this woman, with the expertise, knowledge, strength she has, but she would replace you, and you would feel comfortable that when I leave the bank in good hands. So one of the issues is leadership, but top leadership. Because women are in all the financial systems, but at the lower and middle one. But at the top, there are very, very few. And the second one is, if you look at all services and products which are offered, women are, in some cases, they will have a bank account. But there are very few women who really have access to financial resources to do their business and to grow. It's extremely difficult, even those who are in the middle level. So we are asking them to say, look into your systems and identify what are the obstacles, what are the impediments, what is it which makes it difficult for women to get access to financial resources. Because as entrepreneurs, women are perfect. That's why we even are able to manage poverty, and we succeed to have our families to live in dignity with very small resources. So if we are able to manage this small one, it's because if we have access to a little bit more, we will make not ourselves even better, but we'll also make our families live better, etc., etc. So access to financial resources is the other direction. So with this, we identified in each category of the financial institutions what we call drivers of change. So we have central banks, we have development banks, and we have some commercial banks and insurance companies as drivers of change. What do? We want them to work inside the institutions, but with us, to be able to identify all these issues I'm talking about. And in 2 years' time, we'll convene again and say, these are the problems, and they will give us what they see as actions in 3 years' time. Mm-hmm. So that in 5 years' time, we should be able to say, we started here, we moved there, and what are the changes which we are making so that we can agree on other 5 years then. But in the first two, it's really to inwards, to reflect, to change systems, to change even where it's necessary, mechanisms and then processes, and then you say, my commitment is this. This is the first 2 years. And then the other 3, implementation. And then we'll have a 5 years commitment together. While we, as a network, we continue to engage with each one of them, but more importantly, to connect them, to work as a system, because that's what we're talking about, to work as a system.
Do you think if you make progress here, and I hope you do, that you'll expand this outside of the financial services industry?
So far we are concerned, but yes, let me say something else. As the group, they are going to talk for themselves, they are inside here. As the group with Women in Finance is growing, I'm going to start now, this next month of July, a conversation with women in agriculture. Oh. And I'll tell you why. We say in Africa that women feed our nations. They produce food for everybody, etc., etc., etc. But come again and ask, where are the women when our ministers and our presidents of the African Union or whoever, they are shaping policy on agriculture? Women are not featuring there. Their voice is not present to say what they think, what are their aspirations, how the sector would serve them better. So we need to change this thing of women being there and they are doers, they struggle, but they don't have, one, they don't have a face. For me, it's very important. That's why we call new faces. They have a face. They are not numbers. And they have a voice, which means they have aspirations, they have ideas, they are strategists, they have a vision, and of course, they have this huge energy, which whenever they have an opportunity, they unleash that energy to make social change happen. So that's my point of they have to be at the center stage because it is good for women themselves, but it's good for our families, it's good for our nations, and it's good for this continent. Let me say it's good for the world. Even in regions of the globe where women have much more access to maybe to finance, etc. I don't think in terms of influencing policy, changing policy, women have that much of power. They are very little represented. And I think that's the argument I am making, and we all have to make. You know what? For any reason, our brain power is exactly equal and sometimes much better than other people who are in position of power. Why our brain power would be ignored? Why it would be marginalized? And just believe how powerful and how productive it would be if of the almost 1 billion of the population of this continent, all of them had a say in how we conduct our affairs for the future. It would change. It would change dramatically. And that's what we are trying to, in a very modest way. Because my point now, before I retire from retirement, as Madiba says, is that I want to see, I want to be able to measure that kind of progress. That's why women in finance, we have to see how much in terms of numbers and percentage we have contributed to make. Even in agriculture, that's what we're going to do. And we'll try to do also with women in science. Mm-hmm. You know, I am associated with the University of Cape Town, and I know yes, I know that there are brilliant women in our research programs, etc., etc. But again, they have no face. And they have a very little, if you take away the initiative of HIV vaccine, which is led by a woman, and she speaks on behalf not only of South Africa, but she is part of the global network which is looking for vaccine for AIDS. If you take very, very few of them, all the other women who are in our institutions as lecturers, as researchers, etc., they never. So that's the challenge, actually, I'm living with the young generation to be able to take the center stage. It's just our right.
This idea of faces and voices and role models and inspirers, which you are, I'm just thinking about this new cover story of Fortune, which is the $600 billion challenge, which is a story we actually broke a couple of weeks ago. Warren Buffett and Bill and Melinda Gates calling on the billionaires across America to give 50% of their wealth to charities, philanthropy, good causes. And it strikes me that Melinda Gates, who I've written about and have come to know, she sort of represents the billionaire set. Mm. And what would be so helpful would be to have, we have Ann Moore here, we have Ellen Coleman here, we have some of our most powerful women, and it's wonderful. But, the importance of, and what our most powerful women community is largely about is setting up those role models and saying, these women think about their power beyond their job descriptions and beyond their tenures, and you should too. Mm-hmm. But the importance, yes, in Africa of those women like you becoming not just executors, but role models and faces to represent what can be done is incredibly important. And to Ann's point, this mentoring program that we have, this international mentoring program, hands down, the best women every year are from Africa. Mm-hmm. What do you think that's all about? What do you think makes, and I'm not just saying this, makes the women from Africa who come to the United States to shadow American women leaders the most confident, optimistic, dynamic of all the women in the world?
Oh, thank you. You take the compliment. Huh?
It's true. It's true.
I think it has to do with the fact that whoever is an African woman who has achieved a position in life, she had to struggle 100 times to be where she is. Women in this continent, they struggle from the family level. There will be very few families which are really very nurturing in the sense of giving exactly the same opportunities to boys and girls. So many of them, just with their siblings, they have to struggle, to assert themselves. And then they go to school, it's the same thing. To the workplace, it's the same thing. They struggle, and if they are successful, it's because, as I'm saying, they were 100 times better than somebody else. So when they come to these programs, they have been already challenged, and they have developed, one, they know what they want. By then, they know where they want to go. So they will look at whatever is the possibility you give them as a mentorship. They will look and identify exactly what is of interest for them. They will select that. Second, they bring already this experience of struggling and achieving, that they will use the best those opportunities. And that's why they look like they are much more brilliant, etc. They know. And when they take it, they know exactly in what they are going to apply back home. That's what I could say about the African women I have been privileged to meet. And the reason now coming again to this issue of mentoring and not mentoring. When I was in the beginning of my activities, I was in education, and I was, okay? Now, we used to say that we have to plow back. And at a certain point, I said, okay, wait a second. Maybe now I need to begin to plow into the future. And that's the point. Now, instead of taking back to my community, which is very important, I'll continue to do that, but I'm concerned with the future. And I say, when in this continent, when the Marias, the Mampilas, and the Matais, and all the women, the names which are very famous here, the Precious, etc. When we, because we are a generation in extinction, well, naturally we are getting old, and we retire, and we will die. So who do we leave behind? And how do we establish the connection of the chain of life which comes with the generations? You pass from one generation to the other, isn't it? So consciously, we need to pass to the new generation the lessons of the past, but simply, as I'm saying, opening space and opportunities for them to realize their potential. They know what they want to do. They already know. But just give a little bit of encouragement so that instead of coming as 5 and 10, they have to come up as a generation. They have to come in hundreds and thousands and millions of a generation which comes after us. And really they say, we are African women, and we are here in our rightful, position of taking control of our lives and taking control of our nations and take control of our continent. So it's a process in which we cannot continue to be moving only in small groups. We have to move as waves. So this is an encouragement just to have a new crop, but which comes as a wave of African women to change our landscape in this continent. And so that when we come, we talk to you in the US, we talk to you in Europe, we are this, beautiful and multicultural face of who we are, and with the multi-capacities which we have. And we will be then to talk shoulder to shoulder with you guys.
We are shoulder to shoulder. We have just a few minutes for a couple of questions. Who has a question?
Or maybe
Oh,
a
surely.
contribution. Whatever.
Surely these strong women, powerful women in the room. Really? No questions? Yes, back here.
Hi, it's not so much a question, but thank you so much. I was one of the mentees in the 2010 group, And I have not heard anybody capture what we represented as the African women. I'm feeling quite emotional. That's what we were all talking about, that it's time we start doing things as ones, and we need waves. That's the only way we're going to change the world and change the condition of Africa. It's great to be seen as powerful and you're the only one, and everybody's trying to get a ladder to come up, but it's not enough, and we don't have time. We're no longer as a charity case, as the continent. We need to do something powerful. Thank you so much for those words.
Yes. Jane, we have a question up here. Is the mic up here?
And there's another there.
Okay. Okay, we'll take this one first, and then Jane Raffaele.
Thank you very much. We've been talking about
Can you introduce yourself?
my name is Tegla Lorube from Tegla Lorube Peace Foundation. I was with you in Nairobi during our post-election. Mine is concerning about conflicts in Africa. We cannot move as African women to develop in our country while we have conflict. How are we going to make it for our people who are fighting all the time? We've been receiving many confidence from other countries, but Grace, we don't have our women talking about what is going on in Darfur, Somalia. We cannot move and we cannot develop this continent.
Do you want me to answer?
Yes, please.
You are right. But I just wanted to leave a note of a positive landscape in this continent. 10 years ago, you would have around 17 to 16 countries which were in conflict. Today, you can say maybe there are 4 or 5. So there has been progress. And this has been done through leadership of African countries themselves. I want to pay tribute, for instance, to Thabo Mbeki as the president of South Africa. If there is anything he committed very seriously, it was to help, one, the African Union to have what you call today the council. There's a Security Council which we have to shape the African Union in a way it deals seriously with the conflict. And this country, South Africa, played a huge role in terms of resources, of human capacity, and everything. My minister will say here, I mean, we would have peacekeeping, putting money, et cetera, to help to resolve conflict. But now you are asking women. Maybe, and now you are talking about Darfur. I was in Darfur myself, yeah. I did visit Sudan, and I was in Darfur in South Sudan, etc. There are organizations, women's organizations, we are consistently working on issues of conflict and women in conflict, to protect women. Just recently, the UN Secretary General established what he calls advisory group on women in conflict, which is led, one, by Mary Robinson, second by Binta Diop. She is from Senegal. She has been working on this in the last 15 years. She was involved with her group, I was advisory to that group some time back, but they're doing a lot of work in Sudan precisely. They're doing a lot of work in DRC, in Central Africa, you name it. So there is some work being done. But of course, the horrors of conflict are such that we can't sleep. We sleep with our consciousness if we remember what is happening, for instance, in East DRC. You see? You can't. Even in the issues of Darfur. So the problem is, before you solve the conflict, as you are quite rightly saying, there will be this horror going on. But we shouldn't also ignore the work which is being done to deal with conflict. So I just wanted to leave a note that there's some work being done there. And of course, there's lots of still of challenges. And she was making a comment. It was not even a question there, I think. Yeah.
That was, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Jane?
But before you, can I say something? You know, I was a bit uncomfortable to be introduced as having married two presidents. One, I want to say marrying someone, it's not any achievement at all. A second, no, it's not. You can't put in your CV that your achievement is to have married somebody. For goodness sake, that's yeah. The second, I really didn't marry any president. No, I didn't. I didn't marry two, maybe extraordinary human beings, I will call them. And maybe that's my weakness, is that I'm attracted to strong people. And people who challenge me, people I look at, and that is not only with men, it's with women. I really build a relationship and respect for people who I believe they're better than myself. And that's the weakness which I have. So it happened that these two people had the positions they had, but it has nothing to do with their position. It has to do with their mind and the way they were able to influence society for change. That's what Samora Machel meant for me, and that's what Nelson Mandela meant to me. But really, that thing of power in which they were, let me say something before we close also. You know what?
Wonderful. Keep going.
Because power to me is frightening. It frightens me. I'm very good to influence from behind, but I wouldn't take any of those positions. It's frightening for me. So I know where I can exercise my role, and I think I do the best I can, but that thing of being really at the first position, no. As I said, I'm not a doer, so it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work.
I want to challenge you on that, though. Why though? Why does that position, that number one position, frighten you? Because if you were in that position, you could be the visionary, and you would have a lot of people to execute.
No, I do. I accepted it. Yes, I am a visionary, but my strength is to work in, as I said, in these collectives and somehow networking, to create network and connect, etc. So my influence will be probably from the ground up, but not necessarily from the first position down, you know. And can I confess something? I've been very close to it, and I know how nasty it can be. There's so much of biting from behind, and there's so many of all those things which I don't like. And I say, you know what? I want to spend my energy in a constructive way, not to try and spend my energy trying to open my way because I have to get things done. I don't have to open way, I just have to do it in a way, it can influence the big position, but I don't necessarily have to take it. I think my energy wouldn't be well applied there. No.
That's great.
No, it wouldn't.
That's great. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. I'm sorry about this. Before we do wrap up, I want to do one thing. The minister would love to say a word, and then I'm going to do the one other thing. But minister, please, we'd love to hear from you briefly. Wait for the mic, actually.
Mama Graça, Machel, all powerful, most powerful women in the room. I think I have seen few odd faces in this room, and I happen to be one of them. There in the table sits the President's Advisor on International Relations, Lindiwe Zulu. I want to pay tribute to all the women in this room, that you are very, very special people. That women make a difference wherever they go. But for fortune, Time Mag and CNN have thought about this most powerful women gathering. it's a most powerful idea ever. Secondly, to say to our beloved sister Bridgette, thank you ever so much for having persuaded these most powerful women to come to South Africa, first to get out of from their comfort zone for the first time, and come to Africa for the first time. Come to Africa when Africa is hosting for the first time FIFA World Cup on African soil. You are helping us bury African pessimism. I was saying to my sister seated next to me here that I've had Mexican football fans in my hometown in Polokwane after the game saying, no, we're not checking out. We're staying one more day. Because we didn't know that an African country can be so professional, that they can have such infrastructure. The other one said, actually, also very clean, better than Mexican City. I thought, wow, we have achieved something. Bafana Bafana is out, but it's giving us South Africans an opportunity to do what we are good at, playing good hosts. And that's what we are doing. What's happening today is all our guests, in particular your good selves, are in this country at this moment, is that the world is grappling with how should we get out of this financial and economic challenge or problem. It's a global problem. But again, because majority of the leaders around the world are men, the solutions they're thinking about, we can all agree in this room, that are not necessarily going to solve our problems. So it's very, very critical that all these powerful women in this room make their voices heard and louder. The world, the financial and economic globalization hasn't globalized the way we do things. When the problem started, it started somewhere, and it started with the people we thought knew better. But it affected those who knew less, but who got impacted even worse. Today, as you talk about the billionaires and how they could contribute in turning around the livelihoods of many less privileged people, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because we're not communists, maybe, or maybe because we're not socialists, but we are not humanists. As we are sitting here, I would have gone to the G20 meeting or the G8. There's a G8 plus G5, which South Africa belongs to. We belong to the other group that only comes into the main room when we have desserts. The starter and main meal happen, and then the G5 join the G8 later. We looked forward at this opportunity in Canada that we will collapse the G8 and end up with the G20. Seemingly, it is said that, I saw it on CNN now in the morning, that it's going to take a bit of time for the G8 to collapse. Why am I talking about this? We are still at cross purpose in trying to solve the global economic and financial crisis. While the Americans are talking about bringing about stimulus packages, the Europeans are talking about austerity. Where does it leave us? Where does it leave the developing world that was beginning to emerge, that we're beginning to do things right? This country, South Africa, besides the political miracles that we spoke about earlier on, we were amongst the few developing countries that had a proper, functioning financial and regulatory framework that cushioned many of our people out of this crisis. But who is listening to the experience that South Africa would bring to the table while we're still sitting in the other room, waiting for the dessert? By the time you come to the dessert, you're wrapping up. So we will not be able to influence and help bring the solution to this problem. But I wanted to retire back to my seat by congratulating the leadership of the USA, starting with the Congress, for finally coming up and endorsing that there's a need for a proper financial regulatory framework, because that's the answer. We are in this mess because market forces said, leave government out. That business and market forces know how to do it better. So the experience that young South African financial experts, women, Maria and others young were in this room, bring to the table, as you said, Mama, is that the question you were asked when you started speaking, what is power and what makes you powerful? Deep in my heart, I was like, you are a product of your own experience. So when you go out there into the world, there's already something that says, hey, from experience and from the knocks I got in a patriarchal environment makes me strong. Maybe not necessarily powerful, because I don't have the mullah, but combination of that later in life can make me better. We want to see more and more of this interaction of women in business, women in the financial sector, and women in politics, because we remain forever vulnerable if we work in silos. And we end up not knowing how to take femininity, our commitment to want to change things. Everywhere women go, if they have power, they look for how would they influence, how would they help change things. But when men have power, they want to see how they could use it for more power and for themselves. It is true that Africa is changing and changing for the positive. But I'm sure we can do even better if we have more and more women in the economic sector, but in the financial sector.
To that point, and we do have to wrap up. Thank you so much. To that point, we're going to wrap up, but I would like all of the women from Africa who have participated in the Fortune U.S. State Department Global Women Leaders Mentoring Partnership to just stand up and be acknowledged, because they are the shining lights, the future leaders, stand up. I know we have more here. I think some of them aren't here at the breakfast, but thank you for all you do. Thank you, Ann Moore. Thank you, Time Inc. Thank you, Goldman Sachs, for supporting our mentoring program as Goldman does. Bridgette, thank you so much for your support. And Graça, Machel, you have been just a joy to be up here with. And
thank you.
Thank you for your inspiration.
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you.